As we've been discussing during his State of the Union address, President Biden was not afraid to challenge Republicans in some fiery exchanges.
And exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers. The bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah. You're saying low. Look at the facts. I know you know how to read.
I love it, Mo. Yeah, and Brendan Buck are back with us. Mo, that was a moment. Dude, I mean, really, you know?
It was a great moment. And but I'll be honest, I was a little nervous about if that moment would come. He had a moment like that last year in the State of the Union address, right, where he sort of parlayed the heckling and turned it into sort of a win on Social Security. And it was such a good moment. Like,
it doesn't happen twice,
it, right? You can't force a moment. And so I was worried that they were going to try too hard to recreate that moment. It wasn't forced. He is just that naturally good at parlaying against an opponent. And the Republicans, they did take the bait. They set the trap for themselves, and he just swooped in.
Well, they did long ago, because this was an issue, the immigration bill, that Republicans put up on a tee for this president. And at some point, this was the perfect venue to hit it. I mean, you had Republicans literally saying on the record, I don't want to give Joe Biden a win in the election year, so we're not going to do that. Like, of course he's going to take advantage of that. Then again, they weren't smart enough to be disciplined in the moment there. And to your point, he's better at this than people give him credit for.
That's right.
Brendan Buck, I need to know what you thought of the Republican response, the official Republican response.
Yes.
It was interesting. Look, I think Katie Britt was the absolute right choice to do this. I think she is the kind of person we want to be putting out to show that we are, not all Marjorie Taylor Greens. I think the delivery was unfortunate. She was clearly overcoached. And as somebody who's been involved in some of these responses, you know that sometimes people come out of the woodwork, they hire people. I don't know exactly what happened there. But I thought that she was delivering what was the message got lost for me just in the delivery, and that's unfortunate. And that, that's hard to sort of walk back. But, I generally believe that if you want to do a good State of the Union response, it can't be a mini State of the Union. It needs to be coming from a real particular point of view, and she had a particular point of view. Whether it was effective for everybody, I don't know, but I thought that the idea was sound. I worry a little bit about the delivery.
I want to know what the panel thinks about the kitchen. I want to be very clear. Katie Britt is the junior senator from Alabama. As I've worked for women politicians. The junior senator from Alabama, does not belong in a kitchen in a very lovely blouse. In a kitchen in a very lovely blouse, as though she is not a sitting member of Congress. I heard nothing about her experience in the Senate. I heard nothing about, she ran the Alabama Chamber of Commerce, like Alabama Business Council. Prior to that, she was a chief of staff on the Hill for the seat that she now represents. You would not get that from what we saw here. What is with the kitchen?
I'm going to be counterintuitive here and defend it just a little bit. Just a little bit. Because I don't think she was trying to project her very impressive resume. I think she was trying to project suburban mom. Yes. Right?
Suburban moms belong in the kitchen? That's what people were asking on. That's the question I want to know.
No. And so I don't look. I think the two worst jobs in Washington, the two worst gigs you could have, National Party chair and State of the Union response, right? Like it rarely goes well. And I think, if any media consultant or campaign staffer who gets that call and says to their boss, hell yeah, you should do this, is doing their boss a disservice more often than not. And when they do, they tend to overproduce. and try to overcoach and push these people into being someone they are not. Katie Britt actually is a very, very impressive member of the Senate. She is, I think, would be a potent running mate for Donald Trump, and someone, I think a debate between Vice President Harris and Senator Britt would actually be a really engaging debate to watch as just a student of politics. But when they overproduce, right?
I could just tell you. Do you want to add anything else to what you just said before the internet get a hold of it, Mo?
No, I think look.
Okay.
I think tonight she did not live up to her own potential, and I think if you ever watch any of her speeches, you would see that. But what she did tonight, I think, was overproduced. It was a caricature of who they wanted to actually produce.
I got a lot of folks asking the question. They initially, because people who didn't know who she was thought she was an actress playing a politician. Mm-hmm. And that, to your point, to both your points, is the unfortunate part. But here's the rub. I think we're kind of overthinking some of this, because there's a real baseline approach that I think Republicans took here, Brennan knows as well. I've been in these rooms as well for a lot of this stuff. The audience wasn't necessarily the folks that, more broadly speaking. This was cultured and catered in a way. The kitchen was deliberate. The sort of, workaday mom look was deliberate, and it was an appeal, a direct appeal to suburban white women to come back home. It's time to leave Joe Biden and come back home. And this was the opening salvo in that what will be a very important conversation for Republicans going forward.
So to add to what Michael was saying, there's some reporting in the New York Times about the fact that there were already talking points being released by her teams. She came off like America's mom. She gets it. She's one of us. That'll be family's takeaway in terms of what it was they wanted. Let's move away from the style, which I think we all agree missed the mark, and talk just a little bit then about the substance. It is not an accident that she is from Alabama, given that IVF and the actions of the Supreme Court of Alabama are in the news. So it was telling to me that she touched ever so gently on IVF, saying in very vague terms that Republicans would fight to protect it, despite the fact that there actually was legislation before the U.S. Senate that would have protected IVF, that a member of the Republican Party shot down. And then she pivoted off of it very quickly. So even if stylistically she was trying to say, you can come home, she didn't. There was a lot of fear. That was the other thing. There were a lot of fears that were thrown out there. But I did not hear a real positive vision for what America could be that was trying to bring those.
Well, on that particular issue, I don't think that we have, as a party, figured out reproductive health issues. Have figured out a good place to be at. Right. And I think the party is generally sort of breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief after the state of Alabama passed legislation to protect IVF. I think they're hoping this will just go away a little bit. She had to check the box there and basically say, we're going to protect it and get away from it, because no Republican, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, no one's figured out how to talk about this stuff in a way that isn't going to, be a losing issue. So don't spend a lot of time on issues where you're not winning. So she had to move on from it. Right. I thought this was at least tonally a lot better than what we had last year with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It was much more American carnage. It was much more MAGA. This was at least an effort to try to show people we are not only that. So the substance-wise, whether you agree or disagree with how she framed things, I think she was at least trying to not be the scary Republican.
No, I heard a lot of American carnage in her speech, right? I mean, she painted a very negative picture of Joe Biden's America.
She talked about rape.
Right? And I get it in a sense, because a State of the Union response typically is a response. It is typically designed to paint the president in the worst light possible. But to your point, where I think Republicans are struggling a bit right now is they are not offering actually an alternative. They are offering fear, and they are offering a promise to go back to a period of time that a lot of people don't want to go back to. And so, that time
never existed.
I'm talking about 4 years ago. They're promising to go back to Donald Trump's America, an America that a lot of people don't want to go back to. And so Katie Britt actually had a real opportunity to say, here's what you get with us. Here's what the Republican Party stands for, and here's how we want to move the needle. She didn't do that tonight.
I don't think she's in a position to say that, because the person that gets to decide, here's what you get with us, is Donald Trump. But he's been very clear with us about what he's getting. I mean, before I take us out, question, you talk about IVF. Speaker Johnson did some interviews today, and in at least one of those interviews, he was asked about IVF. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he noted that it's only been around since the 1960s, 1970s. So, you know, there's still more research that has to be done. So I think it is. People have not figured out how to talk about it collectively in the Republican Party apparatus. But I am more concerned, frankly, about what people actually believe.
Yeah, look.
Nobody want to answer that. I understand. We could go. Mo, Brendan. Go ahead. I'll give you the last word.
No, I mean, look, I think that abortion is one thing in the Republican Party. IVF is not the same thing. And there was this sort of rush after the Alabama court where people were like, is that what every Republican believes? No, that is not what every Republican believes. And yeah, would there be implications of this personhood bill that maybe people didn't appreciate? This was not, I don't think the personhood bill was a scheme to get rid of IVF. And if it was by some people, I don't think a lot of people were signing on to it realize it. Should they have a better handle of what they're signing on to? Sure. But it is not the unified position of the Republican Party in any sense, even in the very strong pro-life community, that IVF is bad, and it just snowballed really quick, and now we're just trying to put it back in the tube. Yeah,
I think lots of people have benefited from IVF. The question is an embryo an unborn baby? Even in the Alabama state legislature, they didn't answer that question.
That's right.
Doom, 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 cliffhanger. Mo, Brendan, thank you all very much. We'll have you back next week to talk about IVF and all the other things happening in America.
Earlier, please.
Early. After a short break, folks, former Obama speechwriter David Litt is with us. He has been on all day, and we're going to talk about some of the highlights from Biden's night. Stay with us. You're watching MSNBC.
If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.